Welcome to the Design Imposter Podcast, the show where we explore the enigmatic world of imposter syndrome through the lens of design, community, and empowerment. I'm Monique Jenkins.
And I'm Jessica Valis. We're your co-hosts of the show and the founders of the Creative Circle Collective, a design agency that strengthens community links for nonprofits and corporate businesses by creating impactful branding and websites. Join us as we explore the relationship between design, community, and creativity. Welcome to Design Imposter.
Welcome to another episode of the Design Imposter. Today we are here with our podcast producer, Evan Dvorkin. Welcome, Evan.
Thank you.
Today we kind of want to know all about podcasting, how it's produced, who would be a good podcaster, and get to know you a little bit better. So tell us about how you got started. Give us an overview of your journey from college to now.
So from college, I went to University of Rhode Island. And also, thank you for having me. Appreciate
Absolutely.
it.
Welcome.
In person, which is really fun. So I went to University of Rhode Island, and I actually moved to Maryland to work with my brother in his restaurants. So nothing in this field related, as it turns out, with a lot of us in these kind of creative universes. I went through the usual steps of restaurants, from bartending to managing. I did beverage directing for a while, and that was kind of cool to like write cocktail lists and sphere lists and whatever. And throughout that entire timeline, I was doing photo and video for fun. And then, all of a sudden I got paid for one job at like some other restaurant in Fells Point. And I was like, oh, okay, hold on. I can get paid to do this. And then I kind of like started developing that company and working through it. And then I met my wife, my now wife, Megan, at my brother's restaurant. And she was in digital marketing. So she launched Horseshoe Casino social platforms. She worked with McCormick and Schmidt running all their social stuff. And we kind of like realized we could combine forces in this digital marketing, photo, video world that she was in. We launched our company, Your Socia Gathering, and we had a slew of different clients, but one of those clients had a podcast prior to us signing with them. They lost their video guy. A mutual connection brought me in, and I was like, I know I can film it. I just have to learn the back end of it. This was like 7 years ago. So podcasts were still younger. Yeah. I mean, they've been around for a while, but they're not like when 2020 blew them up. So filming it was no problem because that's pretty straightforward. But then I was like, okay, let's talk back end. So like uploading it and distro, and then marketing it is very different than marketing like a restaurant in Baltimore or just any other company. So we learned all about that, and that was kind of like where it started with him. So his podcast called Cannibal Mindset. The interviews, like you just talked about, a business coach a second ago. So people in that world. The first time I ever worked with him, it was the CEO of Lovesac. I just got a Sactional. It's very expensive. There's a lot of it. It was 2 years of build up to like, I guess we'll buy one. And then we just financed it because the thing's insane. Yeah. But I recommend it because it's very comfy.
I got a purple mattress, did the same thing.
I did
the same thing with the mattress too.
Until want to swap the cushions or what do we call it? The fabric. Yeah. The fabric is just expensive than buying a new couch. I got beef with Lovesac.
Yeah. Sean Nielsen will take it up with him. Yep. But so anyway, that was my introduction to podcasts. And then from there, it was just more, kind of kept growing into it. And it was really fun. And I actually was talking to somebody the other day about like, why is like shooting podcasts so much fun? But like, I did a lot of corporate video shoots before. And when you do corporate shoots, it's a lot of like the CEO or whoever pushing people to be in front of the camera or something along those lines in some way, shape, or form. Whoever you're filming doesn't really want to be filmed, but they have to be filmed. Yeah. So they're always like, they always sit down and like, I just hate being in front of the camera. And like, you know what I mean? Like it's always that kind of universe. But with podcasts, everyone is very excited to be here and very excited to be like, I'm just like looking at the cameras and like, it's just like this fun setting.
Yeah.
Right? You know what I mean? And like,
it's
you're
so
excited.
natural.
Yeah. And like, they're excited because they're talking about whatever you want to talk about. You're not forced to sit here. And I just think that's what really drew me to it. It's really fun. That's the journey.
Can you tell us about some of the very first podcast episodes you recorded and kind of the progress or, the differences between the first ones you did and your process now?
Oh, yeah. The very first one I shot with them, the audio was, even though I knew audio and video recording, I was using their equipment before I had my own equipment. So I wasn't like, and it was also my first time working with them, and we were in like Philly, and I was like kind of meeting them from New York. It was just chaos. And I had some gear, and they had some gear, and he was bringing it, and like his mic gain was set through the roof. Like his was like so high And it took forever to process his audio. So that was just like my first ridiculous. It was the first one. I messed it all up. But ultimately we were able to salvage it and we used it luckily. But like that was just such a silly mistake. I think there was too much going on and I was like excited and nervous. So from that one, and then I'm trying to think of some other, there's not like I said, like I was already shooting a lot and shooting a podcast. It's, 2 cameras, there's 3 microphones, but like it's just the cameras aren't moving. Yep. So like it's not like technically complicated in like the physical sense of like running cameras around and other shoots where you're like gimbal and moving all over the place. So like that part's pretty straightforward. So like it's really learning that back end stuff that I think that's the most new to me. Like how do you get a podcast everywhere? And then turned out it's not that hard to use like Podbean or Libsyn or whatever or Buzzsprout. And then now I know when it comes to, I'll never mess up the gain again. That's for sure. And then, like I luckily, knock on wood, I've been very good about how losing footage. So there's no like crazy standout early days because I came into it as a videographer. So I think I kind of knew. So I don't know if I have any good fun stories besides like the very first one just being madness. We did a fun one. Like if people know Gary Vee. Gary Vaynerchuk, he's insane, and like that was fun because it was just an insane. He's so high energy, and the whole thing was just madness. So like getting to his office in New York and setting up, and he gave us 45 minutes. Then we had 20 minutes, and we're just like, what? So I'd like set up, but then, like the guy that brought me in was like, I want everything. So it was like 4 cameras, and then I couldn't lose I don't know why I thought this one time I was ever going to lose all the audio. So not that I ever have, but I was just like, it's going to happen. I'm going to lose everything. So I have the mic set up how I have these all set up, but then I ran lapel mics and clipped it to the wire, which makes no sense. I just wanted to hide it. I just wanted to hide another microphone, and they were all recording individually with like the little like mic pack hanging off of it. I was like, I don't know, there's microphones everywhere. Yep. So I'm not going to miss this. So that was madness. It ended up everything was fine, but I just had like these weird backups of audio everywhere. So that was probably a really fun one, and just insane the fact that it was like high speed the entire time. It was like all a blur, and then it was over. We're just like, okay, it's like all done.
Is that the funnest person you've ever interviewed is Gary Vee?
Yeah, he was ridiculous. One of my favorites, we interviewed this guy, Frank Shamrock. It wasn't the funniest or anything like that, but my brother and I used to watch UFC a lot before UFC was like oversaturated and insane like it is now. And Frank Shamrock was like OG days of UFC. Like he was before there was like rules and like 300-pound dudes were fighting 100-pound dudes. And like he was part of that like beginning world of it. We interviewed him in California, and that was really cool just because like it was just like kind of like the introduction of like there's like really big people that like, because you can, and we've talked about getting people on podcasts. It's like everyone has an ego and wants to talk. So you can get big people on your podcast, not in like the most impossible feat. So we met with him. I was like, that's so freaking cool that we're like sitting down with this guy and hearing his stories. That was a really cool one that stood out to me because I grew up watching UFC with my brother back in the day. So that was awesome.
What did they say? Never meet your heroes.
Yeah, I didn't.
But you did.
I didn't really know much about him because like that was even before. Like he was before I was even really watching it. But I looked him up. I knew his history. And I was like, oh, this is really cool. Like I was more like right in like the middle. Like I don't know if you remember, like UFC fights were like $100 pay per view, and it was like once every like 4 months. Yeah. And there's like 10 fighters everyone knew. Now I have no clue who anybody is. And there's all we
WWE like me.
I just gave up on it. I was like, even my brother, who was way bigger of a fan, got me into it. It's like I don't even know who these. There's just too many. There's too many different like areas of it, so we gave up. But it was cool.
So Monique and I are going and having our first dual presentation this Friday on podcasting for creatives. So maybe you can help us out with this.
Okay.
What is a good indicator that somebody should start a podcast?
I mean, as somebody that produces podcasts, I would say everybody should start a podcast because that's like it'd be like telling somebody everybody shouldn't have a website, you know. Yeah. But no, I think a good indicator is like what is it going to be used for? So like if somebody is a C-suite, will they use it to network? Yeah. Or are they just like being told to do it because they feel like they should do it? Do you want to position yourself as an authority in your industry like you guys are doing? So like, like with your entire company, I know that the name of the podcast isn't your company name, but it doesn't, you're still talking to designers and people in that field. And you can put it on your website. You can make blogs out of it. You can help your SEO. You do whatever you want, which is great. So then it like really pushes you into like an authoritative position, and you're going to grow your education just inherently through these people that you're interviewing, and also get you in the door with the people you want to interview. So it's like, what are they using it for? Is a good way to understand if they should do it. And then I guess on the other side, also if they just want to do it for fun, it doesn't matter if they should or shouldn't do it. If they want to just do it for the hell of it, But like, I think that's a good indicator. So like, if you're like judge work backwards, why are you doing it? what do you think it's going to accomplish for you? And like you guys know now, since we've talked about it a lot, like what it can accomplish for you, which is really networking when it comes to business. I think that's the biggest one. Maybe it can be a good marketing tool if used correctly. Like if you were using it, like taking social clips, putting it on your social platforms of you guys talking about what you do differently, knowing there's a full podcast behind whatever you're saying. But like that could be a good marketing tool as well. So not just networking, marketing, whatever it may be.
Actually, consequently from the podcast, we've been asked to be speakers
on other podcasts.
Other podcasts.
Yeah, but the first guy.
Yeah, the first guy.
Yep.
Somebody contacted us to be a speaker. And then we got contacted by somebody out in Ohio to come be a speaker.
Nice.
So
on a panel.
Yeah.
That's
so
awesome.
we're excited about that too.
We don't know yet.
We're waiting on details. It's not until April.
Okay, perfect.
But, you know, you think you're reaching out to a small audience, you never know who is listening to you.
Yeah, but even if you are, I think, generally, even if you only have like 6 people listening, you don't know who those 6 people are, like what doors they can open, what connections they have.
And if your numbers are consistent too, like from week to week, the same numbers, that means you got diehard listeners.
Yeah. Well, we went a couple weeks without launching an episode. And then we did our backup episode because we were like, oh man, we really need to get something out
on this.
And in the morning, like right off the bat, I checked the numbers. I was like, man, people have been waiting for the next episode. Like there are the numbers.
Yeah. And especially like if they're subscribing to it, they'll get notified. Just like, I mean, you've heard the YouTube sign off, subscribe, get notified, get whatever. So like it's the same thing with podcasts. I subscribe to a ton of them. And like once it goes live, I see it pop up. I'm like, hey, they're back. Or whoever, whatever movie. So it's awesome.
I'm constantly, I listen to The Daily by the New York Times. I talk about it all the time. I'm sorry.
With The Daily.
I'm sorry. It's my number 1 podcast. And if
Where are your number 1 podcast?
after Design Imposter. I will get on in the morning. I'm taking my kids to school or whatever. And I have to like pull down on podcasts to make it like force refresh. I'm like, come on. Episodes come out at like what, 5 a.m.?
Well, that's why I don't understand that. And I would love to talk to somebody that's why they do a 5 a.m. launch, especially because like you don't know where somebody is listening to it. I always do 12 a.m. launches. Every podcast across the board I've ever done, produced, whatever it is, your guys, 12 a.m. launch, because like it's not like when you post on social, which you guys know, like some audiences are like, oh, you post at 2 p.m. for this audience and 8 p.m. for this audience or whatever it is. But like people going to the gym in the morning, listening to podcasts, driving to work.
Well, I think because it's a news source, like sometimes like for the elections and they're getting results and they don't get them until midnight, 1 o'clock.
Oh, that's
so then they've got like a team in New York and editing, and London, and everyone's working to get that episode out at 5. So it's supposed to be like the latest news. And the
that's fair. Okay, so that makes more sense. See, that's a good reason. Okay,
I learned that from a recent episode.
Okay.
I would have thought like generally people get up at 5 a.m. to like start getting ready for work, like specifically families, because you got to get up, you got to get the kids up, you got to like run around the house and stuff like that. So our episode releases at 5. By the time you get running out the door, probably 6:30, 7 o'clock, it's already there, and you're just like listening on the car.
Yeah.
I just started listening to. You ever listen to Armchair Expert, Zach Shepard's podcast? It's really good. It's but like they have like this Armchair Anonymous where people call in with different topics or whatever. And I just started listening. This is going to sound, I don't know, I guess parents might understand, but like some people might be like, why don't you just like, I was always like, just be with your kid. But like when I'm putting Em down for a nap, and I'm just sitting there holding her, I'll have like a headphone in and playing it. Yeah. And like, I'm not appreciating the fact that I'm sitting there with her, getting her down for a nap. I'm a little ADD. Yeah. So it's nice to have something happening as opposed to just staring into the dark room and waiting for her to fall asleep. So I'll put the headphone in and like play their stuff, and like that keeps like just something.
I do that to ignore Zuri's crying. I'm like, they're canceling.
What are a few steps that someone can take to prep for their first couple episodes?
Yeah, writing out, so not scripts, but like just like questions, show notes, what you want to talk about, topics, so you can keep the timeline flowing. I think that's a good prep. I've heard from big people, and I don't know if I 100% subscribe to this, like record a bunch of throwaways, just to like practice in front of the mic. So like maybe do like 5 fake episodes that you'll trash. Like don't just put into the world, like whatever we record is going in the garbage. We're just going to like get the cobwebs off.
Yeah.
I don't know if you need to do that.
Well, we did that for our podcast. I think the first 2 episodes, we re-recorded, or at least the first episode.
Yeah, I mean, if you choose to do it, I wouldn't be like going into it like, here's 5 hours of my life I'm going to throw away for no reason. Like, it's like, but I've heard people say that, like, record 5, record 10 of them, it's like, then throw them all away and then start as your first one. And I was like, that seems really aggressive.
Yeah.
I would just say, I think, notes and prepping. Obviously, you want to know your gear, even if it's lower end stuff, even if it's a cell phone mic, to know what you're going to do with it afterwards. Cause like that takes a lot of, if you're going to use your cell phone mic to record, like, how are you going to make it a little bit better? Mm-hmm. So just know going into it, if we're in like, it's hard floors, hard ceilings, but I know I can process it out. Like maybe go into your closet where there's clothes and it can absorb some of that sound. So like when you're prepping beyond just what you're going to talk about, it's like where you're going to record, how are you going to capture this stuff, is also really important, from gear list to whatever it may be. As you guys said, I should put gear lists on my site as good marketing. Yeah.
I don't know where I am in this document right now.
Oh, I kind of redid the script. Okay, so you're just talking about scripts, and I don't have a script, but I have an outline in front of me. And actually, this was an episode where we recorded with Evan already. I wasn't happy with it. So, and we were doing it in 3 different offices on Zoom, which we've done for all of our podcasts.
Where the heck are you?
I am on my own set of questions that I put in the car.
She set me up for failure, y'all. If you listen to the last episode, you would know that Jessica was taking shots at me, and apparently it's continuing.
No, I'm not taking shots at anybody. So when we recorded this originally, we were talking about what sets a podcast up for success, and how can you maintain success and grow your audience. And Evan said,
which one? Video. I was like, I said a lot of things. I was like, I said a lot of different things. So I didn't know which one.
About video, about being guest speakers. And I feel like that was like the entire podcast. All I remember talking about was like being a guest, getting guests.
Well, I mean, honestly, like, so we'll just use that as a jumping off point. Like being a guest on a big established podcast is really one of the best ways to grow your podcast. If we're talking like how to grow your podcast, one of the number one ways, it's got to be top 2, top 3 ways to grow yours is to be a guest on a big one. And I mean, of course, as long as they'll let you pitch it, unless they're just like, don't talk about your stuff on mine. But like, they'll let you pitch it. No one cares. So like, that's a great way to do it. So and also video. And like what I was talking about in the last podcast is that we've had ones that didn't do video, but we have the audio. So, and I said to you guys one as an example, like it's like just that audio waveform bouncing, and you put the captions on, you do your headshots, and it looks really nice. And we did for this other podcast, a ton of them, just a ton of those waveform ones, and they did fine on TikTok. They did like fine on Instagram, kind of. Mm-hmm. And then we like essentially turned the cameras on. Okay, we're doing cameras now, and then we did the exact same kind of edit with them talking, with the captions, with all that stuff, and it was like 10x results on TikTok and Reels. Not to say that it immediately results to listens on your podcast, but it just inherently did so much better on social media.
And that was my thinking when
I hate it.
I was like, well, Creative Circle, we're going to be signing with some really big clients soon, and we can probably afford to have the video go with the audio and have somebody manage it on TikTok, because I just like videos of people doing their gardens and nature videos for the kids. Maybe IKEA hacks.
Yeah, I do like the IKEA hack ones. Those are nice.
I don't like TikTok, y'all. I don't get it. I don't get what these kids is doing around here. It's too much.
So what are some of your favorite podcasts to listen to? And have you learned anything from listening to them that you apply to your business?
Yeah, well, so I bounce between like either something educational or just something entertaining. Sometimes you just need something entertaining. Like the entertaining ones, like I just said, Armchair Expert is great. I'm a big Scrubs fan. I don't know if you watch Scrubs back in the day, but they have a podcast, Zach Braff, Donald Faison.
Really?
It's great. So it's a rewatch podcast. So it's called Fake Doctors, Real Friends. And they rewatch the episode and they talk about it. And it's mostly just like them just goofing around. It's so much fun.
That sounds fun.
Yeah, so it's fantastic. If you watch Scrubs back in the day. Those are the entertainment ones, and there is some marketing ones. Social Media Examiner has one. I wish I remember these names better. I should. Podcraft is a good one. Mm-hmm. I learned a lot from there. What are the other ones? There's so Meet the Podcasters. I'm just looking at all the ones I saved. School of Podcasting is great. Social Media Marketing. So They're literally, I think the name is literally social media marketing. It's literally the name of the podcast.
Sometimes simple works.
Yeah. But from all of those is a lot of it is learning the marketing side of it, which is okay. Here's a great one for running ads for podcasts. I found this to be really clever, and I implemented it immediately and got some good results. You're running Facebook and Instagram ads, right? And you're targeting people that are on iOS devices and on Wi-Fi. So meaning that they're stationary. They're probably not in their car. They're probably not walking to the grocery store. They're like in a stationary, most likely in a stationary situation. I guess you could be on Wi-Fi in the grocery store, but you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And you're sending them directly to your Apple podcast link. So not a link tree, not Spotify. Mm-hmm. So you kind of like almost guarantee they have it on their phone. They most likely use it. This podcast that we use it for, 40% of the listeners are on Apple. So I figured that was a good target to hit. And that was pretty successful. It wasn't expensive per click, so you knew they were clicking on it. Got some good subscribers out of it, and I learned that from, I think, the podcast school podcast. And I was like, that's a really interesting way. It's just like, one, it's an iOS device, so you got that checked off. Your phone already has the podcast app on it because it comes with it when you buy it.
Yeah.
So it's already on their phone. And then the Wi-Fi thing was just like a little extra something. And then, of course, you go into the obvious ones like interest and age and demographic. Yeah. But those you just do that for every ad. That makes sense. So that all worked out well. This is for a sports podcast. So it was easy to narrow down the demographic and all that. And that was a really cool thing I learned. That was a fun ad run.
I looked at some of our stats yesterday while I was logged in, and it said the majority of people listening were listening on Chrome, I guess on their browser.
Yeah.
That's interesting. What are this reporting weird? Majority more than Spotify? I feel like Spotify's the biggest one.
More than Spotify. Spotify came up second, and then Apple Music came up third. So I wonder, because we post this on LinkedIn and a bunch of other places, if people are listening while they're at work on their computers.
I forgot they post on LinkedIn. That's a good point.
When they say Chrome, is it like it opens up in the Chrome app in Spotify, or just it doesn't distinguish?
It doesn't distinguish. Maybe Evan can find that out for us.
I can look. I can look. But it also could be Podbean. It depends what you're posting. Like when you post a new episode, are you linking to what? Like your Podbean?
I was linked to Spotify. I think
I do both. I do Spotify and Apple.
Okay.
Well, normally I do Apple.
Yeah, I was gonna say you're more.
On Apple, you're Spotify.
Yeah.
I normally listen on Spotify. All my stuff, like what I just pulled up now, that was Spotify too. I don't really listen to anything on Apple.
I don't have Spotify. Yeah.
You have Spotify and Apple Music?
That's why I only use Spotify. I never use Apple Music.
I was listening.
I'm sorry.
Apple Music confuses me.
I don't know if Apple Music is the same as Spotify. I mean that you can just download whatever you want for like one monthly price. That's all I love about Spotify. It's the same for Apple Music. To be fair, I'm actually on my in-laws Spotify, like their account.
Oh, okay.
And Megan didn't know I was on it. She's just like paying for her own Spotify, and I didn't know she was paying for it. And I was like, and I saw a bill. I was like, why are we paying for Spotify? She's like, well, how do you? She's like, how do you listen to it?
Yeah, so we're on the so it includes. This is a total detour from the podcast, but the Apple Family Plan, I think it's like $9 a month, or maybe $20. But it's got my mom, my dad, Chris, me. They get access to Apple Music. And also I've got like 1 terabyte of cloud space for everybody in the family to utilize. So
I'll only pay $16.99 for for Spotify Premium Family.
Okay, but do you get anything else? Do you get terabytes on the cloud?
I get terabytes on the cloud. That's like one of those things where they're like, oh, and then you get a free mug. I'm not going to use that mug, sir. I don't want that.
No, I don't want your branded mug.
Yes, I don't want your stuff. But I'm like, it's only me, Brian, and my mom. So, I do have open spots. I think I still have like 3 open spots, but I haven't given them to anybody at this particular junction. Well, if you want to try out Spotify, you can have one of my spots.
I was just looking in Dropbox the other day. I'm using 110 terabytes of storage for all my footage.
Oh my gosh. I believe it.
Yeah.
I believe it.
I also never delete anything.
Yeah, same.
So, on a business sense, off of podcasting, what have been some of the biggest moments for you as an entrepreneur? And when have you experienced imposter syndrome, and how did you overcome it?
Some of the biggest moments, I still remember when we named our company. That was really fun. And I know that it was like before it even started, but it stands out because it was so fun. We were like at our favorite restaurant being like, we should do this. And like we came up with the name and all that. So that stands out as a really fun time, which I know is like right in the beginning because it didn't exist yet. I think a big thing is when I started transitioning out of my brother's restaurant. And I know not everybody has this freedom. So I'm very grateful for the freedom that I had, is that like his family and like I literally, as opposed to being like I quit and like I'm jumping in. Hopefully I can pay my bills. Like I just kind of took on less responsibility, and we worked out like a fair salary to decline, and it would decline a little, and then I would grow my business a little. And so I was grateful to be in that position of someone that was, supporting, like I was still helping them obviously, but like, and then we eventually just closed the door. And this is just really cool. So that stands out just as like away from going, like, how do you go from like your main career into a creative industry? And I know not everybody has that option that I have, I get it. But it stood out because I was grateful that was the option I had. And then I remember also telling, when Megan and I had the talk of her leaving her company because she couldn't do that because it was not a family company. Although I wish McCormick was a family company. That would be amazing. But yeah, she, when we pulled the plug and just went all in, and that was really wild. Imposter syndrome. Honestly, it's hard to say, like with early days in the podcast thing, just being like, I'll figure out the back end of it. I still remember like just fumbling around in the back until I started learning that. Now I feel better about it. I think with any time you're running ads, you're always nervous about how they'll perform, and then the end of the month you feel better. So like right in the middle when you're watching the ads go, because I do help on the marketing side in the paid ads department, like in like the Google ads world and whatever. So like outside of the video side of it, there's parts where I do feel imposter syndrome. But then like you just look at the results, you know what I mean? But it's hard. You're in the middle when you're in it. You're just like, I don't know. This is like what's happening. I'm spending other people's money. It's really terrifying. Yeah. But then at the end, you got to look at the result and be like, it worked and it's okay. And I think that gets me out of it, being like, all right, let's just like reflect on what we did. Did it work or did it not work? And it seemed to work how we wanted it to, at least. And sometimes with some surprises, but like you can find what was wrong and like correct and move on. So I think like just reflecting on like how you got yourself there. We are like, Megan and I are like, the reason we're here is because we did something right. Yeah. And it's just trying to remember that, like I know, I just learned from, actually I was filming one of Chad's talks, and he said in like 2026, like 60% of the workforce will be entrepreneurs who want to own their own business, which is, so more people in the gig economy will own their own company and be entrepreneurs than will be actually working for other people. And I just think it's like, it's cool when you like look at that you guys we work for ourselves, and it's hard and terrifying and awesome. And then like, but we did it and we're here, and you're about to pitch an amazing client. I'm not giving anything away. Thanks for the intel. And congratulations. But like you guys put yourself in that position. So whenever you feel like you're an imposter, you're like, you got yourself there. You survived 100% of the downfalls that you've gone through to get to this point, right? You're still standing. So I think that helps. Just looking back.
Yeah, I think having somebody or a network of people who support you absolutely helps you get over that hurdle. When you have somebody that's like, it's okay this month. Next month will be better. Yeah. And they're not like, so when are you going back to corporate? Yeah. No. When are you joining the workforce again? Yeah. You don't need those people.
My mom still doesn't think I have a job.
My mom doesn't either. My mom doesn't either, which is horrible.
She's like, you need to go back and work for your brother. You can't believe you left all those years ago. She's like, you have a daughter? How are you going to pay for everything? I'm like, what do you think I've been doing? Like, just like robbing banks for 10 years? Like, I was like, I don't, she'll never. And like, I was like, we have a company and clients. She's like, but like, I guess my brother's restaurants are some of our clients. She's like, they're your only clients. I'm like, they're not. But like, she's an old Jewish mother. What are you going to do? But like, I love her. I know it's out of love, but she's just like, so there's people that are like, so are you going to be done with this now? Can we go get a job now? I'm just like, okay. I don't know what to say anymore.
So what's your advice for someone who's in a similar situation? So you had an easier, but not easy, let's clarify, an easier transition since you were able to balance like working for your brother and kind of scaling that work down. Yeah. And there are some people just like flat out, you're out there, you got to figure out your bills, whatever the case is. Yeah. What do you think is like best advice for someone who just like maybe got laid off or they just quit cold turkey? They are now in the podcasting world. And I'm going to talk about this in 2 segments. Okay. From the view of the podcaster, but also for the view of someone who wants to be on the back end. They want to be able to do the filming and the recording and do the edits and stuff like that. They want some type of production-based company. Yeah. What would be your advice to them for getting started?
Yeah, I mean, I feel like a lot of creatives, some people accept this answer, some people hate this answer, but like you do need to do some work for free in the beginning as a creative. And I know that people hate that answer, but I
don't like that answer, guys.
I know. Where you work for next to nothing. That was my startup
but like,
story.
I mean, like honestly, like just to, so I took the journey through photos to video to audio to podcast. So like, but like in the photo world, when I started, I mean, I was like, I need a portfolio, right? So I had 5 of my friends over, got pizzas and beers. set up a backdrop, did headshots for them. That was my headshot portfolio. And then that got me some
friends helping friends.
Exactly. Yeah. It got me some cheap jobs. They got some headshots out of it, whatever it was. And those cheap jobs grew my portfolio and so on. Then I want to get in the video world. So I'm like, okay, I don't have a portfolio. I don't have anything to show. So I just, from like maybe it was my brother's restaurant or whatever it may be. I did do a few free things now I have a portfolio on a website that I can show off, and they don't need to know it was free.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Yeah. They don't, that doesn't matter. They just know you filmed something.
Yeah.
And then, so yes, you got to prove you can do it. But like people in the creative field hate when you say do X, Y, or Z for free, do your art for free, whatever it is to prove it. But like no one blinks an eye at unpaid interns in corporations.
I do.
You know what I mean? Like, but it's certainly way. I mean, I agree with you, but it's certainly way more commonplace.
Yeah.
I remember when Megan was interning at it was Planet, one of the agencies here. She wasn't getting paid to do it, and they were running around like crazy. Yeah. I was like, "F this."
Yeah.
But you have to prove you know what you're doing at some point, I guess, in some capacity. Mind you, maybe it shouldn't be for free in that world, especially for monster companies.
Yeah.
But so starting out in the production side of it.
Yeah.
But you also got to hone it in, because the production side of it is a lot of things. There's the filming side of it. There's maybe just literally the producing side of it, where you're like organizing things, and whatever it may be. So what is it you want to do? Prove it in some capacity, or see if somebody's hiring an assistant. That's a good way to do it too. Maybe you get a low hourly, but you still get something and you get in. Yeah. So I think that's awesome. And then I think and then your first side of the question, which is what's starting out in the podcast world, you just got laid off. I mean, I would say don't expect to make money podcasting right away. Yeah. Some people have figured out to get sponsored before it starts, and maybe because they have some gargantuan following on some social media platform they can leverage.
Yeah,
sure, but like it's not. If you start podcasting to make money, you're probably not gonna keep going. Right. It should be fun. It should have another reason. Like if you're just in it for the money, it's probably not gonna go through, because it's hard to get to like a high lucrative place in the podcast world.
It's like when you're listening to a podcast and there's 5 commercial breaks. Yeah. You just hit that fast forward 30 seconds button.
Well, especially I know you know what I'm talking about with Spotify is if you're a really big podcast on Spotify, they actually make the ads a little fancier, but it's good for the listener because like the ad is like sliced off from the podcast. Yeah. So you can just like 15-second that thing to hell until you jump right back. You don't even have to look because it just stops 15-seconding, like when you know what I mean, when you hit the end of it. So while I don't know Spotify meant to do it, but they made it way easier to skip ads than it was once before. Because sometimes you jump a little too far, you got to jump back and forth. Yeah. But yeah, so like loading up like front loading a ton of ads to get like because you're selling them at like $100 a pop or something to make something off of it. But I mean, if you want to talk about ads, just an example, and this is why it's so hard to make money. Forget your Instagram leveraging, forget any of that leveraging. If you're only advertising on your podcast, you're trying to sell a company an advertising spot. And this is very general, but like the general rule of thumb is averaging around $26 per 1,000 downloads per episode.
Oh, that's not that bad.
You know what I'm saying? So like if your episode gets 1,000 downloads, you can charge $26 for a 30-second ad spot.
Oh, okay.
You know what I'm saying? Gotcha. So that if you have 1 million downloads, 26 times, so that's kind of where that number starts to grow. Or I guess you take 1 million divided by 1,000 times 26.
Monique's over here doing the math.
Yeah.
She's got her calculator.
But that's
how to get to 1 million.
So that's like the industry. I think it's like CPM. So like per 1,000, right? So like that's like the standard across the board. Yeah. Now, mind you, you can be like a big celebrity like Dax Shepard's podcast or whatever, and they probably charge some. I mean, mind you, they probably have $1 million episode, but like they probably also take that number and quadruple it because it's them. Yeah. Or whatever. So like so when I say it's hard, it's like just if I'm getting $1,000 episode, freaking fantastic. But like now you reach out to companies, you don't want to ask them for $26, for a 30-second spot. Even though that's the industry average, you probably still ask for $100, $200 because like they're gonna be like, well, you should be charging me $25. We're like, that's ridiculous. I also need to record the ad and write the ad, and so like that takes time.
Yeah.
Is it one ad for the $26? Because I'm like, sometimes when I'm listening to podcasts on Spotify, they're doing ads for like 2 different companies or 2 to 3 different companies.
It's however you want it. So like like one podcast I work on, they do like burnt in ads, and then other ones do like called dynamic ads. So like I think dynamic ads are a little bit better just because to me it feels cleaner. So like a dynamic ad means like you tell Podbean, in the beginning of your podcast, before it starts, like slot A, B, and C are for ads, right? So you sell slot A, B, and C, and then in the middle of your podcast, you tell it at like 25 minutes and 13 seconds because you guys like had like a moment or break or whatever. Then like slot in, D, E, F or whatever. So now you're selling those slots for like 6 months. Is kind of how you do it. So so it's like per podcast. So you're like, hey, we have 4 podcasts per month. So do the math on it, and then times 6 months, and you can sell it over like a block. Okay. Be like kind of how you'd math it out. And then also like when I say $26 average, so like slot A, so the most valuable slot is the middle, because that's the least skipped slot. So you could probably charge like, let's say $28. I mean, these are such random numbers, but like you mark that one up 10% because the middle slot, then you could take the industry average for slot in the beginning. And then I say you could put ads at the end. It's the worst place to put it, obviously, because no one stays there. So maybe that's like, if you just want a little extra something, maybe you give it to them for like 75% less than slot than the beginning. So here's a little something sprinkled at the end. If somebody wants it, if a little company wants it, they can't afford the main one, but they want something on there, then maybe they'll catch a listener or two. You know what I mean? Like towards the end one. So those are your 3 main slots. So dynamic's great because if it's burnt in, it's there forever. So you're selling it in perpetuity. That's not going anywhere once that podcast is live. Now, obviously, you could delete it, I guess, but like it's just burnt into your podcast, into the audio. And I feel like you can sell that if you want for maybe a higher value, or like maybe like you can have an entire episode produced by a company and then sell that for a higher value, and that's burnt in forever. Like if you interview somebody huge, like, hey, we're interviewing this monster. This podcast, this episode's going to just crush. Who wants to be the sponsor of the episode? And that goes nowhere. Anytime anyone wants to listen to the XYZ episode, this podcast is brought to you by BetterHelp, whatever. BetterHelp, you have to pay for that spot. Or Hulu. But like, I just like somebody pay for this. But so you know what I mean? Like that's another way of doing it and like pitching it, like the fake doctors, real friends one. They have just like before you start the podcast, like 6 you got to jump through, and then like whatever it is in the middle. But they had like a huge one that was live, and everyone was excited for it to go out, and that whole thing was brought to you by T-Mobile. Okay. There was like no ads in it, but there was like the whole lead up. Like this is all brought to you by T-Mobile. This is like, so I was like, okay, they sold something here for it. So those are all the different ways you can advertise on it. But it's I equate it to like everyone knows like YouTube ads. I think that's more common like knowledge of like when the ad runs, you get like a percentage of a penny essentially. So annoying. It's like nothing. You know what I mean? So like that's like when people are like, I'm going to get rich off YouTube ad space. It's like not even the big YouTubers don't get rich off the YouTube ad. They get rich off the other ads and like partnerships they sell. Sponsorships and stuff. Yeah. So that was a long-winded ad thing, but that's kind of how there you go. Did that answer the question, I think? Yeah. I couldn't remember. It was like 10 minutes before that.
So you told us about listening to Dax Shepard's podcast. What are some of the other ones you listen to?
So I said before, so there's Dax Shepard. I'm just going to pull up my phone. I'm going to shamelessly bring up my phone. Fake Doctors, Real Friends. These are entertainment ones, so I'll tell you what I like. So, okay. So there's also Factually with Adam Conover. I like learning stuff, but like sometimes it's like, you know, the podcast stuff you should know. I feel like it's one of the biggest ones. That's why I always bring it up. And it's like, I just certainly don't listen to every episode, but I'll just doom scroll till I find like a really interesting one. And so I love podcasts where you can kind of like, they're big. And you can just pick something cool to learn. So Factually with Adam Conover, I love. What Now with Trevor Noah just launched, and he's really smart. So I love listening to it. I feel like he's like really interesting. But like, I haven't loved his guests. I mean, I'm just like, I don't know who they are. So I'm not like educated enough to be like, I want to listen to this person. Science Versus, another good one. Clearly they're just like learning ones. But when it comes to podcasting, Podcraft is a good one. And then I said it before, but the School of Podcasting is fantastic if you want to just learn about podcasting. And then the podcast, literally called Social Media Marketing, is awesome. They're like they have like a big marketing conference every year. So those are really good ones to learn. Of course, your guys' podcast. Yes. If you haven't heard of the Design Imposter, it's fantastic. Smart List is celebrity ones are fun sometimes. But yeah, that's the general list of what I'm listening to now.
What do you listen to, Monique?
I don't listen. We talked about this before, but I don't listen to anything. I don't listen to anything educational. I only listen to like random ridiculousness. So I listen, or I listen to and watch, because they all have YouTube channels. So I'm not really sure how that works. But I listen to the Hello 7 podcast. I think that one's really
What's that one about?
Smart. It's about becoming a millionaire. Duh. You know that one.
Duh. Seven.
Everyone
seven figures.
Seven.
My bad.
So I listen to that one. I listen to... else do I listen to? Black Wealth Renaissance. I listen to The Future with Christo. I listen to Design Details. I listen to The Starving Artist, although they haven't shot an episode in quite some time. So I haven't listened to them in a little bit. I think that's it.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely I get on kicks too, like with the Dax Shepard one. Like I'm on a kick, so because I just found it recently and it's been around for a minute. Like I'm blasting through those, and like I just on the car right here jump back to like the Fake Doctors one because they finally released another episode. But like I just get on these I get on like a roll. Yep. Or, like the Adam Conover one, I'll find it. I'll be like, I'm just listening to this one until I like get bored of it. And I'll jump around. So I get on it's like I'm like constantly like going through my gambit. Like I'm just like, I wanted to listen to all the Armchair Anonymous, which is and we talked about this a little bit once before, but like instead of launching a second podcast, like you can just have like subcategories within yours. So it can be like maybe there's one where it's just like you guys just talking. Like it's not even not about a specific marketing topic or whatever. And you could just be like just chatting, and you put that in the beginning and then like a hyphen and then like maybe a little bit of the overview what you're talking about. So like that's what like with Armchair, the podcast is called Armchair Expert, but if you look in there and you scroll, you'll see like 5 different podcasts like in there, and it's all them. They're just like specifically a thing.
We call ours like We're Hungry. Chatting with Monique and Jessica while they eat food.
I want to
There's a podcast from photographers I like. They launched. I haven't listened to it in a long time, but it's called When's Food. And it's like they order delivery, and then their podcast is as long as it takes the delivery to show up. Like that's really funny.
That's really cute.
Yeah.
I like that.
Yeah.
See, those are the things that get me. I'm like, that's a fun idea.
So here's a list of podcasts I listen to. Obviously, The Daily by the New York Times. I listen to The Long Read by The Guardian. That's another news thing where they read like really long research. So
listening to the news.
Be informed.
There's nothing good.
It is our duty. I listen to obviously The Design Imposter, A Short History of by Noisier. It is like maybe 40 minutes of like history, and they condense it down. So this morning I was driving in, I'm listening to a 27-minute thing about Queen Victoria, but then they also have like I listened to one about Marco Polo. I know about the game in the pool, but I didn't know the full history of Marco Polo, and he's very impressive. Do you know anything about Marco Polo?
You might like the ones I was talking about before of like the factually one is great. Yeah. It's just like if you just want to like learn random stuff, like that's what it is. It's very like it's like they're educational. They're certainly not in my field of work sometimes.
Yeah.
I mean, sometimes you need a minute. You just like you just need a break for a second. I do have field of work ones in there, but like let's just learn something weird random.
I also like ones that are mini series. So my best friend and I listened to this one called The Hidden Jinn, and it's all about exploring this idea of jinn, like genies in the Muslim community.
Oh, I'm literally taking the drink before you
No, jinn. D-J-I-N-N.
Did you think of jinn? I was like, oh, the origin of jinn. Okay.
No. And it's all about like these people's stories about encountering jinn, just how like Christians say they maybe encounter angels and spirits and stuff.
Yeah.
But it's like, they go about the history of jinn and the different types. And so every episode they focus on a different type of jinn. And it was really interesting because I watched, what was it like? Oh God. There was a movie about a jinn. I'm going to find it and I'm going to link it. And I was like, oh, I already know all about this. Like the Seal of Solomon and everything. I'm like, I know this.
Did you ever listen to Serial?
Yeah.
So like, you know how Serial's format, which is like the interviewee kind of like, and it's like a whole story and you can almost like visualize it, which is freaking incredible.
Yeah.
Science Versus is kind of the same world. It's also like kind of randomly learn whatever you want, pick and choose the episodes you actually care about. But they are like, they interview people, they have like an A story and a B story. That's why I love it. And it, like, there's the A story of them being like, here's what we talked about, whatever. Okay, we're going to talk, like we talked to this person, listen to what he said about, and they cut to that interview. They pull back. Yeah. And then so we talked to this person, they cut to the, you know what it is. And it's just like was so good at how the production is incredible. Like each episode must be an arsenal of people. And at the end, they talk about how many citations they have just because it's funny. Like this episode had 120 citations. And you can find it on our web. I'm just like, what? Like how many people work for you guys? Like it's got to be just like a world of people.
And the last one, which I only do occasionally because there's only so much you can do, is called Betwixt
The Sheets. The history of sex, scandal, and society.
Love that.
So they'll pick one thing about sex
and talk about it.
And it's not even the kinky stuff all the time. Sometimes
I like how you have to quantify all the time. You're like, all the time.
It's not all the time.
Yeah. It's only like 95% of the time.
I mean, that's what the podcast is about. But again, it's informative.
I do listen to, there's one called like Murders and Margaritas, where they talk about like a different like murder case.
Murder podcast.
Oh yeah, I listen with Megan and I listen to so many of those. Especially like we listen to Morning Cup of Murder, which is such a good name.
That's awesome.
You ever get mad at how good of a
right
name
now.
that is?
Yeah.
We used to, I don't know if I told you guys this, I can't remember what we talked about last time, but such a ridiculous thing we did is we would go to these national parks, and there was a podcast called Park Predator, and it's just like the horrible murder that took place at the national park that we were about to go to. So, where are we going? Okay, we got to find the Park Predator episode on the national, like Rocky Mountain that we're going to go to. We just listened to it. It was just like the worst idea ever. We did it every time, religiously.
I need more episodes of Missing 311.
It was like missing people?
Yeah, missing people.
Oh my gosh.
Now that you're talking about like people getting, murders in parks.
You know what? Y'all just scared me. Because I walked through the parking garage by myself, but I got a knife. Don't play with me.
I guess when you have camera gear, you're always like you're always on alert. Especially like when you have tripods hanging off your bag and stuff. Like everyone knows your bag.
I'm not playing. I'll stab you first. I'll figure it out later with the police.
We'll talk about it later. Every
time I'm listening to a murder podcast and then I walk into a situation that someone who just got murdered walked into, I'd be like, this is probably how she died. You need to be aware of your surroundings. And then I'm like looking around like a crazy maniac.
I listened to this one podcast about how like this entire family was wiped out because the mom was giving everybody antifreeze. And then I know somebody and they were like, I think they're actually like slowly killing him. I was like, is it antifreeze? Because it can't be detected.
Oh my god! Well, we like, I mean, I'm sure you guys do too. You watch like every Netflix documentary of all the murder, and like Megan and I watch those, and we'll be like, "Is it weird that we're so numb? We're just like watching like these like horrible murder shows.
Oh, yeah.
Like it's like what? All right, anyway, good night, love you." And like that's like right before we go to bed. We're just like, all right, and then it's like we're fine.
Yeah.
I was like, no nightmares. Is it weird we did nightmares? Like I was like, okay, whatever.
We are incredibly numb to what's happening. My friend went to Mexico, and I was like, "Oh, there were some people that just got killed in Mexico." She said, "Monique, I'm gonna be fine." And the whole time that she was there, I was like, I'm going to be in her Netflix special. Like, I told her not to go. Yeah. She didn't listen to me.
You know what? If you were the Netflix special, you'd be the only person that said, because everyone else is like, well, I thought it would be fine. And
exactly.
Like, there's never an interview with someone where like, I fucking told him. Like,
that's me.
Yeah, that never happens.
I told her about the murder. She didn't listen.
Or
I told her don't go there.
You always get the neighbor that says they seem so normal.
No, yeah. She didn't. She's crazy. I can understand why you probably killed her.
Yeah,
I get it.
There's always doesn't seem so. It's like they like cast the show. They're like, all right, where's the neighbor that thought they were normal? There's that one. It's good.
Okay, I have one last one, and this is kind of more back to work, and it is a Smart Agency Masterclass with Jason Swank, and he interviews different agency owners who specialize in like maybe SEO or website design or UX. I'm sorry.
I'm listening to like Beyonce and rap track music all the time, or white noise because I don't want to hear anything else that's going on around me. Those are my listening to. Like Brian's like, "Are you listening to white noise right now?" I'm trying to block.
Yeah, yes. Listening to Smart Agency will give you huge imposter vibes.
Really?
Yeah, just because these people are so successful, they talk about, I sold my agency for X number of dollars, millions, and then then I started another one, and you're like. Okay, I'm not quite there yet, but
yeah. Actually, that's a good about SEO. That's a good answer to the imposter syndrome question. Of whenever you feel it, is anytime. It's like you shouldn't know when you're learning because you're learning.
Yeah.
But like when I listen to these podcasts about podcasts or whatever it is, and like every time like something like even that little ad note, I was like, oh my god! I was like, I didn't. Like, that was such a good note. But like, how did they learn it? You know what I mean? Like, but like every time I learn something through a podcast, that's when like a little imposter syndrome sets in. Especially if it's a big thing. Mm-hmm. I'm just like, dang, that's a really big thing, and then it's gonna be awesome. Somebody implements it with everybody. But like, should I have known that 10 years ago? Like I said, like you just like, when should I have known that?
Yeah.
Like that's such a weird thing to think.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's like anything. You have to try something before you know if you're good at it or if you even like it, which is why for like young children, you sign them up for everything: baseball, soccer, basketball, lacrosse, Boy Scouts,
we're getting
Girl
the little
Scouts,
one in gymnastics, and she's only 13 months old, which I guess isn't really just little kids running in circles, but Megan wanted to sign her up for it, so it's fine.
She's gonna nap like a champ after that.
Oh, I'm sure.
Or
hopefully,
if you don't know if you're like gonna be good at something or if you should get into it, you should talk to somebody. Like our episode about Monique's top 5 UX insights, and we were not like 3 minutes into the call, and I was like, no, I never want to do UX. I don't want to do that.
I guess it's like, that's not my skill and I don't want to be a part of it. That's cool. I don't want to be a part of you.
How do you feel? I actually thought about you the other day when like you're going to cancel something like a subscription or membership and like the no is highlighted the wrong, like then the no and yes, they highlight it in order to make you click no, I don't want to cancel because you think you're like just confirming yes. That's like the most clearance does that. Like airport clearance. Yeah. I got this thing and they're like, oh, it's time for renewal for $300 or something. I was like, I have not flown. Like I fly once a year maybe. And so I went to go cancel and I felt like I tried to cancel 5 times. And then finally I saw you're clicking on the wrong one.
The button, the big button was, yes, I want to stay. And the small text under it was, no, I'm sure I will leave. Oh, I know. What is it? Like dark design pattern.
That's what dark design. I don't remember what I was canceling the other day, but I saw it and I was like, Monique would like this one.
The one that I hate is Planet Fitness because you can't cancel online. You have to go into the.
I know membership. That's mind blowing. No, I'd be like, well, it's gonna suck for you guys. I'm gonna cancel my credit card, I guess. But like,
I was like, I will shut this whole account down. If you think you get another $10 from me, I will switch every single bill that I have not to do this
out of spite.
And they make you go to the place that you signed up at. And I was telling the lady, I was like, you know how ridiculous that is. I was like, because if you buy the $24 membership, you get to use whatever Planet Fitness in the entirety of the world. I was like, the problem with that is, what if I move out of state? I would have to come back to Maryland to cancel at the place that I started at. No, that doesn't make any sense.
I feel like they're making it easier to cancel.
Yeah, they should be. Because they got complaints.
It's like that meme of like you pull up to a gas station pump and it says like pay attendant inside. You're like, I'll just find another gas station.
Yep. Yeah.
I'm not going to interact with other human beings. That's insane.
That very much is me. I'm like, I'm not going inside. I don't want to get out the car. Anyhow.
Well, this was a really fun episode. We learned a little bit about podcasting. We talked about our favorite podcasts, and hopefully everyone has like a nice little deck of things they can listen to. I've got some new ones.
Yeah.
I'm going to have Science Versus
it's good.
up on my lineup. It seems all I listen to is educational stuff.
You do.
I get it. It's fun learning random stuff. Then I bore Megan with it. I'm just like, guess what I just learned on like this random. She's like, I don't want to know.
Oh yeah.
About the random
I'll bring up the news to Chris and he's like, all right.
See, Chris is me in the relationship. That's Brian with all these like random facts. I'm like, I don't really care about this, sir. Can you make the tacos? Or like, what's happening here?
So as we wrap up, Evan, give everybody an overview of all your services and how they can get in touch with you.
Yeah, we do. So Your Socia Gathering is our digital marketing company. It is, so we'll run your social media accounts if you don't want to. We'll run paid ads and everything in between. Then I obviously do photo video work, podcast production, and all that. But so there is another company that I'm growing because we're putting all the podcasts together into their own awesome network, which you might have heard of, like Dear Media does a similar thing. Just to build that network together is called Cannonball Media. So cannonballmedia.co is going to be like the podcast production network. Where everyone, so that's where everything's produced through. So Your Socia Gathering, anything digital marketing, and then Cannonball Media for all of your podcast needs. And then if you want to just follow me for fun on Instagram, it's just Evan Dvorkin, which you can find the spelling in the show notes.
Yeah. Sound it out.
Yeah, it's exactly how it sounds. Yeah, Dvorkin. Although everyone puts like an E in between the D and the V or whatever. It's just
I want to put an apostrophe on something in that name.
Yep, that's a lot of. I got that too. I get that all the time. We get, are you related to Dr. Dvorkin? I was like, just because it rhymes doesn't make any sense. No, spelled different, just rhymes a little. So no, but yeah, I've gotten all of it.
Well, thank you so much for joining us today. Really appreciate it. It's fun.
Thank you guys.
As we conclude another episode of the Design Imposter Podcast, remember, self-doubt may be a universal experience, but it should never define your worth or potential.
Embrace the power of your creativity, trust in your abilities, and continue creating fearlessly. You belong in this space, and your contributions are invaluable to your community and those around you.
Thank you for being a part of the Design Imposter community, and don't forget to subscribe and follow us on Instagram and Facebook, and leave a review to help other imposters find us.
Until our next episode, keep those headphones ready.